From the Cronkite Studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Welcome to this special edition of Cronkite News. I'm Lily Altavina. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, a showcase from our Cronkite News Investigative Team of reporters as they work to hold government agencies accountable and uncover problems in our communities.
A team of researchers worked with the Tempe Police Department to study the effects of body-worn cameras. Cronkite News investigator Natalie Tarangoli learned about the study's early results.
This video of a Tempe police officer chasing a fleeing suspect last October was recorded with a body-worn camera. An Arizona State University professor led a study on widespread effects of body-worn cameras.
One of the things that we were very interested in capturing was officer attitudes about body-worn cameras.
The 2-year-long study started in November 2015. Phase 1 meant half of the Tempe Police Patrol, about 100 officers, wore the cameras.
I've conducted surveys with officers in a number of different departments, and by far Tempe's officers have been the most supportive of the technology.
Less than 10 ASU graduate students made up White's research team. They interviewed citizens about the cameras, how they felt they were treated, and if it affected their behavior around the officer. The study done by ASU showed that most people approved of the officers using body-worn cameras.
Nearly 90% of the citizens strongly agreed that the officers treated them with respect, treated them fairly, they were honest, they listened, they cared, and they acted professionally.
White's team got feedback from nearly 400 people. Phase 2 just finished in November, so all patrol officers have cameras. Half have had them for a year now.
In Tempe, the officers have been very supportive of the technology for the most part, and what we were able to document over time is that any sort of concern or questions they had really dissipated after officers started wearing the cameras.
Despite the widespread approval, the cameras are limited.
At certain times, just because you have the front view of what's going on, you don't know what's going on behind the officer. You don't know if somebody's assaulting them, if somebody's pointing something at them from a different angle.
As for the 10% of people who didn't approve of the cameras, White said their main concern with being recorded was privacy.
Because something bad had happened, and now they were concerned that this was memorialized on film.
Tempe police wear cameras that record 30 seconds prior to actually turning them on.
Double tap. It's now recording.
But the American Civil Liberties Union of Arizona advocates for more.
For an automatic turn on for a body camera, say when there are raised voices or when there's jostling of the police officer's body.
White expects the results to be released this spring, giving insight on the impact of the cameras in areas like use of force and citizen complaints.
I'm curious to see in Tempe whether there's a temporary effect on complaints or if it's going to, that reduction is going to persist.
In the meantime, Tempe Police is doing what they can to increase transparency.
We are trying to implement where officers, when they are en route to a call, to turn on the cameras to avoid forgetting.
In Tempe, Natalie Tarangoli, Cronkite News.
With divisive political rhetoric in the headlines and controversial policies put into place on a daily basis, there's growing concern for violent crimes committed over political opinion. Reporter Carla Liriano looked at 2 Arizona proposals which would change how the justice system treats politically motivated assaults.
Rebecca lives in Minneapolis. Interesting.
Dozens of letters came through Alberto Gutierrez's office. As an Arizona elector, people begged him to abandon President Trump when he cast his electoral college vote.
Part of the amount of emails, letters, phone calls we received to try to change our vote.
Then there was the window. 2 days before the election, Gutierrez was getting groceries when somebody smashed his car window with a crowbar.
So I never made nothing out of it, but at the same time, it could have been a political harassment, or it could be some kind of what we call hate crime.
The perpetrator was never caught, but one Arizona lawmaker believes that crimes committed with political motivations should receive harsher sentences.
Imagine people being afraid to voice their opinions politically, to wear a button in support of a candidate or a ballot measure for fear of being beaten up. I think that's an aggravating factor because it corrodes democracy and free speech.
Kavanaugh sponsored Senate Bill 1022, which would classify crimes committed over political beliefs as hate crimes during sentencing. But the Anti-Defamation League says it's unfair to equate personal politics to protected classes like race, religion, and sexual orientation.
Hate crimes are based on immutable characteristics. One can change political affiliation, one can change their preference for a candidate, but one can't change the color of their skin.
Kavanaugh has now filed a new bill, SB 1187, which would simply encourage judges to take political motivations into account.
It will avoid the argument of whether this should be a hate crime.
On December 19th, Gutierrez cast his vote for President Donald Trump, despite the pleas and intimidation.
99% of the cases, they're not going to change a person's mind or the political views. So what are they gaining? Nothing.
In Phoenix, Carla Liriano, Cronkite News.
Our Cronkite News investigation, Hooked RX from Prescription to Addiction, chronicled the opioid epidemic in Arizona. But of course, this isn't the only state struggling to contain the growing problem. Jolani Martinez of our Los Angeles bureau traveled to Ventura County, California, where dealers are getting more creative and overdoses are on the rise.
On September 9th, Stephanie Young lost her only child to a heroin overdose.
He had been sober, and he had got it from someone that he used to get it from, and his body had been clean, and he had overdosed. The person left him, was with him when it happened.
In 2016, the picture has changed completely. It is anyone and everyone can become addicted to heroin because it doesn't start with heroin.
Richard LaPerriere works with people who suffer from drug and alcohol abuse in Ventura County and says heroin users make up 20% of the population they treat.
The passage from X to heroin is the passage through a prescribed medication that contains opioids or opiates.
Zachary's overdose death and two more that quickly followed prompted increased attention from police, which took down a heroin delivery service that was operating the same way you might order a pizza.
So in this one, we received information that there was actually a dispatch center. And this dispatch center was that if you wanted narcotics, specifically heroin, methamphetamine, or cocaine, you could call this phone number.
Once an order was submitted, a runner would be sent to a desired location and make the sale. Police confiscated heroin that was packed in colored water balloons, each color representing a certain gram. But police aren't the only ones in Ventura County taking more aggressive action to stop opioid abuse.
Last week, the Heroin Task Force met right here at Simi Valley City Hall to discuss plans in combating the epidemic.
The Community Prevention Group was formed in 2012 after grieving parents like Melissa Siebers seeked change within their communities.
We were all like, we have to do something like this. There's a problem going on here, and if we can get the city to come together, maybe we can come up with some ideas and make a difference.
Ideas like a needle exchange program and after-school activities.
But what we really need to do is to inform the kids from age 8th grade on up. All the kids need to know, age appropriate, like, look, this is what's going on. You need to make better choices.
Choices that might have saved Zachary Young.
He was my only child. And so him and I were extremely, extremely close. It's just hard. Every day's a struggle.
In Ventura County, Jolani Martinez, Cronkite News.
You can watch our documentary Hooked RX from Prescription to Addiction, investigating the opioid epidemic at hookedrx.com.
The Maricopa County Sheriff's Office is facing a difficult financial future. All programs are under scrutiny, including one high-profile facility that was a point of pride for former Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Reporter Veronica Acosta sat down with his successor to find out what's next for Tent City.
A racial profiling suit is costing the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office tens of millions of dollars. So newly elected Sheriff Popendone is looking for ways to be more fiscally efficient. One option on the table, closing Tent City. Tent City, a source of pride for former Sheriff Joe Arpaio, a spectacle to some, a social injustice to others.
It really blew my mind that this is how we're handling these people that need help in our culture and in our society.
But the facility's future under new Sheriff Popendone is unclear. Some who've spent time inside the tents in extreme heat or bitter cold have a good idea of what they think should happen next.
It has to go.
The aging men and women's facilities are tucked away along a sprawling stretch of county property along Durango Street. The Maricopa County Sheriff's Office operates multiple jails across Maricopa County, some more than half empty. Closing one of these jails makes sense to some, and they want to start with Tent City.
I don't believe there was ever need for Tent City.
County Supervisor Steve Gallardo says the financial argument to close at least one jail is compelling. The sheriff's office must come up with $8 million in cost savings this year. Meanwhile, multiple jails have high vacancy rates.
I believe the Tent City should be taken away. I believe we should eliminate it. We have jail cells that are empty that these inmates can be placed in.
So Cronkite News took the question to newly elected Sheriff Paul Penzone.
There's been a lot of concern over the past several years with it regarding treatment, regarding the true need for it because of the population across all of our detention centers.
So Sheriff Penzone formed SPEAR, a group of community members that will review Tent City within the next couple of weeks, and his expectations are clear.
If I'm going to continue to keep it open, I need to know it's for the right reasons.
As for Blue Pony, she's unsure of Tent City's future, but she's glad she's no longer there to have to live through it. While the occupancy rate, including all Maricopa County jails, sits at about 70%, officials tell us closing Tent City would also mean finding an appropriate place for the nonviolent offenders who are housed there. The SPEAR committee is expected to give its recommendation in early April. In the broadcast center, Veronica Acosta, Cronkite News.
Some might describe Narcan as a miracle drug for those suffering from opioid addiction. The state of Arizona has taken steps to make it easier to get. But as investigative reporter Megan Finnerty discovered, it's not as easy as some were led to believe.
It sounded so easy. You don't need a doctor's prescription anymore to get Narcan to a loved one or friend suffering from an opioid addiction. Just go to your local pharmacy. But like many great ideas, right now this one is bound in red tape. Getting this drug quickly and easily into the hands of those who need it has been a long time coming for advocates.
If it wasn't for naloxone, I wouldn't be here today.
Naloxone, or Narcan, has only one function: to save lives. It reverses an opioid overdose of drugs like heroin or oxycodone.
I said in the last 2 years, we've noticed that we've had to use it a lot more often. It's really hard to put a time frame on it. I've had it anywhere from using it once a month to 3 times in 3 hours in a day.
Our state has suffered so much from this opioid epidemic. I think people are ready for some new solutions.
To do its part, the Arizona legislature added police and EMTs to the ranks of first responders allowed to administer the drug in 2015. 1 year later, lawmakers permitting friends or relatives to get prescriptions for loved ones, and gave the pharmacist the ability to dispense the drug without a prescription. But instead, Cronkite News has found the availability of Narcan mirrored in misinformation and confusion.
There was a point where the doctors didn't even know you could prescribe it.
The Arizona Board of Pharmacy created laws allowing pharmacists to dispense the drug without a prescription after proper training. The problem is they're not required to get the training in the first place, and there's no easy way for the public to find out who's qualified to dispense the drug.
The issue is that it's so recent that these changes have been made that a lot of people aren't aware of what naloxone is. They aren't aware of where to get naloxone, how to use naloxone, or even that they can get it.
So to cut through the confusion, groups like Sonoran Prevention Works have started going to those who need it instead, bringing free education and Narcan to the people.
Yeah, it's completely free. So our trainings, our technical assistance, and our naloxone kits are free.
Michelle Scambalori of the Navajo County Public Health Department invited Coles to teach about Narcan on a cold winter afternoon in Show Low. The crowd was small, but the message important.
And I wanted people in the community to see that passion and hopefully have it translate over to how they saw substance use in the community, and that it wasn't just a moralistic issue, that we wanted to keep people from dying, because it is preventable.
And as the state continues to sort through the red tape, this group of friends who met in recovery will continue making free kits, knowing Narcan may save others just like it saved some of them.
If you say getting naloxone in the hands of people that are actively using isn't important, then you're saying my life isn't important. And I help people today, and I love people today, and I'm a contributing member of society.
Emergency services say after using Narcan, you should still call 911 because it's possible to overdose again. Advocates want the community to know overdosing can be a fatal side effect to a mental illness of addiction. In the broadcast center, Megan Finnerty, Cronkite News.
In 2013, the city of Phoenix set a goal to reach 40% of waste diverted from landfills by the year 2020. At that time, the rate sat at only 16%. Investigative reporter Natalie Tarangioli found Phoenix is still lagging compared to other cities, but officials remain positive.
It's been more than 3 years since the 40 by 20 goal was set, and the rate has increased just 25%. So I asked city officials whether the goal is too ambitious and what's being done to meet it. Phoenix has a major trash problem and an ambitious goal to fix it. City officials want to divert 40% of waste going to landfills by 2020, but are only halfway there with 3 years to go.
We really have to be innovative. We have to work together with the community.
But similar-sized cities aren't relying on innovation alone. Cronkite News found Philadelphia, San Antonio, and San Diego are meeting trash diversion rates from 10 to 50% higher than Phoenix. They're doing so with various mandates, fines, and more pickup opportunities for multifamily homes and businesses.
The city can't do it alone. Residents are going to have to participate. So the first thing you have to do is reach the residents with a message that resonates, that incents them to want to recycle.
City officials insist the 40% goal isn't out of reach.
We're working very strategically because we have to, because it is such an ambitious goal.
Brossart said Phoenix's lag in diversion rates isn't necessarily a bad thing.
I think Phoenix has a unique opportunity because it is a little bit behind to learn what other cities have done, get the best practices, the best ideas, the latest technology, the newest innovations, and they're doing all that.
The city currently sends 1 million tons of trash to landfill each year, a lot of which isn't necessarily trash.
My team, we're the Zero Waste team. We're really focused on educating the public and residents on how to recycle properly.
What we found is that moving that needle is really a challenge. And so we were going to have to get super creative, really innovative, and very strategic.
The consensus, it's up to residents if the city is going to meet that 40% goal. That means making sure you know what you can and can't recycle. I visited one of the facilities that sorts materials, and I saw items like clothing, plastic bags, even small appliances that people had tried to recycle. When they come through the facility, they end up in landfill and negatively affecting the diversion rate. In the broadcast center, Natalie Tarangioli, Cronkite News.
Divided by the political aisle and social ideals, Arizonans have grown more fearful of the other side. Investigative reporter Megan Finnerty talked to Arizonans to find out how fear affects society.
With an endless stream of rallies, protests, tweets, and talking heads have presented Americans with the political extremes. Yet there's a common thread: fear for the future.
When we feel that way, what we do is we fight back with tooth and nail.
Born Arizona State student Siavash Naji Talakar, fear took when his Iranian grandmother was swept up at LAX in the early hours of the president's travel ban.
My fear was if they send her back on a 40-hour, probably even longer on a return trip to Iran as being deported, I was worried that she wouldn't make it. I was worried for her life.
Arizonans fearful of what a Trump administration means can be found protesting weekly across the valley.
Basically, this is a death sentence for me. If they do away with ACA and they don't have a replacement, I'll be dying.
People here are in fear that our democracy is being slowly ripped away from us.
But it's the Trump supporters that were also afraid and felt compelled to vote for the populist Republican.
He says he doesn't like illegal immigrants. Who likes illegal people?
I want stricter immigration. I'm for immigration, but legal immigration.
In response to a Public Insight Network query, Pat Baker said, "I feel safer already. The Dems are acting like children."
Right now, both sides feel like they're losing.
Michelle Chioda, an Arizona State University associate professor of psychology, says, when it comes to division in politics and society, it's a zero-sum game with winners and losers.
It's in our nature to form alliances and in-groups and out-groups, us and them.
As for Naji Talakar's grandmother, even when she was safe with her grandson, a new fear set in.
And now we're afraid to let her leave because we want to make sure we have that time with her. We don't think that she'll be able to come back.
However, the country may not be as divided as it seems. Shiota believes there's a large middle ground, but it doesn't get much attention. People who believe in the sometimes, but not always.
Don't be afraid to try to comprehend the life experience of people who disagree with you.
Until then, those motivated by fear of losing their America will demonstrate their fight in handwritten letters, signs, and song. Out of terror. Reporting in Phoenix, Megan Finnerty, Cronkite News.
Dr. Shiota said this country is too big to come to consensus, but instead we should be working toward compromise in politics and society.
Arizona is in dire need of foster homes, but if you're interested in opening up your home, the process isn't instant. Prospective parents have to make sure their house is safe enough to pass a rigorous state inspection. It's a process that changed in the past few years. Reporter Lily Altavina explains how the changes have affected families.
These are magnetic cabinet locks. They're pretty much a must-have for foster parents who are required to keep any possible hazardous substances and even vitamins under lock and key. Last year, foster homes were cited in life safety inspections more than 1,000 times for failing to safeguard hazards. And that's just one way the process can be held up. I examined the safety inspection process and found out how the state is trying to make it better.
Michelle and Scott Medved decided to become foster parents after tragedy struck.
5 years ago, we lost a daughter, and she died of SIDS at 10 weeks.
But before they could become foster parents, the Medveds needed to get licensed. The process includes passing a state life safety inspection, which meant buying the right kind of fire extinguisher, putting together a first aid kit, and more.
Some of the most important things are the medications, really making sure that, you know, we have children that need medication on a daily basis because of their special needs. So it's making sure that they're locked up.
The Arizona Department of Child Safety changed its rules for life safety inspections in January of 2016.
When the rules changed in January of last year, we started tracking as we noticed that some families were not passing the inspections.
Over 9 months last year, more than 57% of life safety inspections resulted in a deficiency. Now, DCS is working to improve its communication with foster families and licensing agencies so more families pass inspections the first time.
It's a big portion of being able to get licensed. The house has to pass the inspection, and there's just a ton of information that the family needs to know.
Jamie Lindsay helps families examine every part of their home for possible safety issues.
It is important. Kids that are in care, they haven't necessarily had the same upbringing and the same lifestyle that the foster family is used to.
The Medveds say they have learned a lot from the process, important as their 2-year-old daughter Katie, who they adopted after fostering, becomes mobile.
There's things you don't think about when you're going through the licensing that you think, well, gosh, maybe just to have a child you should have to go through this.
Some of the most common deficiencies in life safety inspections in 2016 were fire safety and evacuation plan related issues. And the Medveds say they practice their evacuation plan every month. In the broadcast center, Lily Altavina, Cronkite News.
Lake Havasu City is about 145 miles away from Phoenix on the Colorado River. It's a hot spot for spring breakers, but the city doesn't just expect revenues to stop at bar tabs, food, and hotels. Investigative reporter Megan Finnerty went out west to see how spring breakers affect their economy.
Tourism is our economy in Lake Havasu.
Tourists, snowbirds, and boaters come to Lake Havasu to see the London Bridge, take a tour, and soak up the sun. But when the college students show up, it's a sign.
In March is when we get our spring breakers, which is kind of the signal to us that winter has ended and our summer's on its way.
Hotels are preparing for the influx of spring breakers, having almost sold out of rooms for the entire month of March.
Typically, we're at about an 85% occupancy, and now that's counting weekends, which is not when the formal spring break period is. That is Monday through Wednesday, and they'll depart on Thursdays.
A seasonal tradition that ripples through the area economy. Spring breakers spend their money on hotels, rentals, and bar tabs, prompting employers to hire seasonal staff. People work overtime, make more money, and in turn spend their wages in the city. City data reveals the spring break month of March last year was the second highest month in terms of tax revenue from restaurants, bars, and entertainment. And since fiscal year 2009, total taxes collected has grown from about 14 million to almost 20.
Spring break specifically is more of a long range. Not only do folks come to Lake Havasu for spring break, maybe for a weekend, 3, 4, 5 days, or a week, they also create memories. And those memories generally turn into repeat visits.
But not all companies are benefiting from the breakers. Sunset Tours caters to an older, wealthier audience on board their 2 boats.
We get a few spring breakers on board, but a lot of people like to come here during spring break, quite frankly, to enjoy the action that the spring breakers bring. So it's a lot of fun. It's a fun time of the year. It's my favorite time of the year.
But this year they're hoping to target the younger demographic.
But this is the first year we're really looking into providing a service to the spring breakers. Up until this point, we haven't really focused a lot of attention on spring breakers, but it is a big market here for the next 4 weeks. So we are going to be putting together a spring break tour to Copper Canyon.
And the businesses are ready for the influx of students and their cash. In Lake Havasu, Megan Finnerty, Cronkite News.
Lake Havasu is a draw for students from California, Nevada, and of course, here in Arizona.
That's it for this special edition of Cronkite News Tonight. For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.